8 kilometers, one girl, one dog, and a truth no one saw coming. There's a moment when fear lies to us, when our heartbeat drowns out the truth and we mistake a guardian for a threat. 12-year-old Lina Rose thought she was being hunted. A dark shape kept following her, mile after mile through the woods of Ashwood. She didn't stop to ask why. She just pedaled harder, heart in her throat, until her world fell apart at the edge of an old wooden bridge. What no one realized was that the shadow trailing her wasn't hunting. It was guarding, bleeding, limping, but never giving up. And by the time the truth came to light, a secret long buried would surface, and a girl's life would never be the same. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story about a dog. It's about how the most wounded hearts often become the strongest protectors, and how sometimes we only recognize love after it's bled for us. The sky over Elmridge held that lazy shimmer of late July, where heat rose in waves off the gravel and time itself seemed to stretch thin like the humming of cicadas. On the edge of town, nestled between dense groves of pine and tangled honeysuckle, stood Grandma Thelma's house, a faded farmhouse with weathered shutters and a porch that creaked with memory. Inside, Lina Rose was lacing up her sneakers, her brows furrowed in silent defiance. At 12, she already wore the posture of someone older shoulders slightly forward, eyes that flinched less from fear and more from remembering. Her copper-brown braid bounced behind her as she moved, an echo of the mother who once wore the same expression in the same house. "Helmet!" Thelma called from the kitchen, the word rolling off her tongue like a command from someone who'd raised 3 generations of strong-willed women. "It's already on," Lina replied, adjusting the chin strap with practiced fingers. The plastic buckle clicked shut. "And yes, I packed water." Thelma wiped her hands on a dish towel and came to the doorway. Her silver bun sagged a little from the humidity, and her eyes, still sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, softened at the sight of her granddaughter. "I made you a sandwich anyway. There's orange slices in there, too. It's going to be near 95 today." Lina took the brown paper bag without protest. "Thanks, Nana. I'll eat it when I stop by the big rock." That rock, mossy and sun-warmed, marked the halfway point along the trail that cut through Ashwood Hollow, connecting Grandma Thelma's side of town to her father's house near the western edge of Elmridge. Thelma hesitated. "You sure you don't want your dad to come get you? I could call him." "I'm fine," Lina replied, voice light but final. It wasn't defiance, not really. Just that stubborn edge that had carved itself into her after her mom died in the crash. That day had taught her 2 things: that safety was fragile, and that she'd rather face the world than wait for it to collapse again. Thelma sighed, crossing her arms. "I just don't like you going through those woods alone, Lina. Things aren't like they used to be." Lina paused, then gave a half-smile, the kind that almost said, "Don't worry, but not quite. It's just trees. I've done it 1,000,000 times." Thelma didn't answer. Instead, she followed Lina out onto the porch and stood there as the girl wheeled her blue bike down the steps. The familiar creak of the porch boards beneath her feet was joined by another sound, the clink of Thelma's binoculars, swinging from her neck like a necklace of old habits. She had once been a bird watcher. Now, the birds were excuses. What she truly watched were people she loved walking away. Lina glanced back once from the edge of the yard. Her helmet glinted in the sun, and the brown bag hung from her handlebars. "I'll call when I get home," she said. "You better," Thelma replied, though her voice was softer now. As Lina pedaled off, her tires crunched over gravel, then whispered into the pine-sheltered trail. Velma stood still on the porch, lifting the binoculars to her eyes. She didn't say it aloud, but in her chest the words pressed like a prayer. Just get to the other side. The trail into Ashwood Hollow was familiar, but not friendly. It was narrow in places, wide in others, and woven through with vines and root-twisted ground. The heat didn't reach here the same way. It sank into the earth, making the air feel close, like someone breathing too near. Lina stood on her pedals to power through the first incline. Her legs, lean and sun-kissed, moved with steady rhythm. She was thinking about spaghetti Dad promised he'd cook it tonight, and whether the sauce would taste burnt again. Not about danger. Not yet. Behind her, though still far off, something stirred in the green. Lina didn't know that just beyond the fallen pine at the edge of the trail, something watched. Not with menace, with memory. Shadow, once known as Echo, stood in the shade, his body half hidden beneath the overgrowth. His right ear, or what remained of it, twitched at the girl's every movement. Scars lined his flank like a map of battles long since faded, and his breathing came uneven. But his eyes, those burning amber eyes, were fixed. It wasn't hunger that drew him, it was familiarity. The girl had a way of moving, not with grace but with stubborn momentum, head forward, jaw set. She reminded him of the boy, Benji, the one he'd dragged from the fire, the one he thought he'd died saving. Echo hadn't followed anyone in months. Not since the cage, not since the shelter. But now. His paw stepped forward. A muscle along his burned haunch protested. He flinched, but didn't stop. The instinct was louder than the pain. He would follow. Back on the trail, Lina's ride had fallen into its usual rhythm push, through the soft dirt patches, lean into the bends, and avoid the rock with the sharp edge near the hollowed cedar trunk. Her breathing had evened out, her thoughts drifting toward whether her dad remembered to pick up garlic bread. But something pricked at her spine. The trail seemed quieter than usual. The birds were still singing, but not the same way. Their tones were clipped, uneasy. She coasted to a stop. The bike's wheels clicked softly as they slowed. Lina scanned the woods. Nothing moved, nothing obvious. But she called out anyway. "Hello?" No answer. Just the sound of her own voice bouncing off bark and moss. Then a soft rustle to the left. A squirrel? A breeze? "Is someone there?" She tried again. A little louder. She tightened her grip on the handlebars. Suddenly she felt 12 again. Not older, not wiser, just small. But nothing came out of the woods. So she pedaled. Faster this time. From the undergrowth, Echo resumed his slow pursuit. Always 50 meters back. Never closing in. His legs ached. The scar along his side burned from the heat and exertion, but he didn't stop. The girl was moving faster now, and something ahead smelled wrong. He raised his nose. There, on the breeze, a bitter edge. Smoke, beer, teenage sweat. The dog's ears flattened. The girl was heading toward it. Whatever it was. And she didn't know. But he did. And he was not going to lose another one. Not this time. The woods of Ashwood Hollow were older than the town they bordered. Gnarled roots and mossy trunks that whispered stories no one cared to remember anymore. But not all stories vanish. Some keep breathing. Some grow eyes in the underbrush and scars across their backs. And some follow. He lay still at first, low to the earth, head between his front paws. A German shepherd, once proud and fierce, now weathered, gaunt, and stitched with memory. The name they'd given him once, Echo, had faded like the tags they took from his collar the day they left him behind. Now he was little more than a shadow. One ear stood, alert and trembling, the other gone. A jagged remnant curled against the side of his head like torn fabric. His coat, once sleek and badge-worthy, was patchy with burns and battle. His eyes, though his eyes were sharp as ever, amber, darkened by smoke and things he'd seen and never forgotten. 50 meters ahead, she rode. The girl, slim shoulders, copper hair, confidence in her legs, but tension in her shoulders. The kind of tension he knew too well, the kind that came from carrying more than a child should. His nose twitched. There was something about her. Not just scent, not just motion. Familiar, not in name, not in face, but in weight, in energy, in the quiet heaviness of those who've lost something they don't talk about. Echo had seen it before. Benji had carried that same weight the night of the fire. The boy who screamed through smoke for a mother too far gone, who clung to Echo's neck while the roof collapsed behind them. And this girl, she had it too. She was like Benji young, but already broken in ways she hadn't learned how to say out loud yet. And something stirred in Echo's chest. A flicker. Weak. Forgotten. Purpose. Not instinct. Not hunger. Mission. He hadn't felt that since before the shelter. Since before the steel cages and the white walls and the voices saying he was too far gone and damaged beyond rehabilitation. But watching her now, alone on that trail so small between the trees, something in him shifted. He stood, slowly, carefully. His limbs ached from sleeping too long on cold dirt. A scab reopened along his flank. He didn't flinch. Pain was familiar. Expected. He watched her bike disappear briefly around a bend in the trail, then reappear through a gap in the ferns, always 50 meters. Close enough to see. Far enough not to scare. He limped forward, deliberately placing each paw in the softest patch of earth. Silent. Invisible. The way he'd been trained to move in places no one should have to walk with a dog. His breath came in short bursts, his ribs pressed too tight against scarred skin. But the distance didn't matter, because the girl was moving. And where she moved, so would he. A squirrel darted across the trail up ahead. The girl didn't notice. She was pedaling harder now, maybe from instinct, maybe from the heat. Her ponytail lifted and fell with each rotation. Echo paused behind a downed log, letting the ferns swallow him. His gaze never left her. She reminded him of another trail, another forest, another child. Back then it was Afghanistan, a patrol unit. He'd been leaner, sharper. His handler called him the best tracker in the division. But even then, he knew. It wasn't the scent of explosives or enemy sweat that guided him best. It was fear, and this girl carried just enough of it to wake something in him. Overhead a hawk cried. Echo's ear twitched. Then, silence. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy, unnatural kind. His body tensed. Something in the wind had changed. He sniffed once, twice. There, faint traces of beer, tobacco, and the stinging chemical scent of synthetic sweat. Teenagers. Male. 3. His lip curled. They were ahead of her. He didn't know what they wanted, but he knew what came next. He'd seen it too many times. Boys with nothing to lose, a girl who thought she was just riding home, and somewhere between them, the moment everything would change. He moved faster now, not enough to close the gap, just enough to stay ready. Her wheels hit a root. She bounced, laughed maybe, just a short breath. But it made him pause. There was still light in her. Not much, but enough. He couldn't lose that. Not again. From his place behind a veil of ferns, Echo kept moving. His body knew the work, even if his heart was hesitant. He wasn't supposed to feel anymore. But this wasn't instinct. It was something deeper. The boy, the fire, the silence that followed, the months wandering, the nights curled under trees too thin to block the cold, the way people looked at him with fear, never knowing he once wore a badge. He had been forgotten. And yet, here he was, watching a girl who had no idea her life was about to change, who had no idea a guardian was bleeding in her shadow, just close enough to protect. She stood on her pedals to take a hill. Echo adjusted course, following the bend from deeper in the brush. He winced. His paw caught on a jagged rock, drawing blood. He kept going, because she was going, because the forest wasn't empty, and because whatever waited up ahead didn't smell like safety. The trail narrowed the farther Lina rode, and the trees leaned in as if they were quietly deciding whether to let her pass. She'd never really noticed it before, the way the branches of Ashwood Hollow interlocked overhead, creating a kind of cathedral of green and shadow. It had always felt familiar. Not welcoming exactly, but known, predictable. The same bumps, the same old fallen log near the curve that looked like a sleeping bear. It was the kind of place you only feared if you didn't know it. And Lina knew it. At least she thought she did. Her bike hummed softly beneath her, tires thumping against the dirt and patches of stone. A dragonfly skittered beside her handlebars for a moment before disappearing into the brush. She'd made this trip dozens of times before, maybe 100. And yet today something felt different. She couldn't name it. Couldn't point to any one thing. Just a subtle tension. Like the forest had stopped breathing. Like it was holding its breath for something to happen. Up ahead, the trail curved in a soft arc around an old cedar stump. The sun, now beginning its slow slide toward the hills, cast a honey-colored glow through the branches. Dust danced in golden shafts of light that cut through the underbrush. It should have been beautiful. But Lina's shoulders tensed. She felt it, not in her ears, not in her eyes, but somewhere deeper. The way a deer feels the snap of a hunter's bow before it hears the twang. The way people sometimes feel someone looking at them before they turn around. That's what it felt like. Being watched. She slowed down. The tires beneath her crunched softly into the looser gravel of the bend. The forest around her didn't move. And that, somehow, made it worse. The silence wasn't empty. It was listening. She coasted to a stop. "Hello?" she called, trying to sound casual, but even she heard the crack in her voice. Nothing. Just a bird fluttering somewhere deeper in the woods. Lina swallowed. She glanced over her shoulder. The trail behind her was empty, just the gentle dust cloud her wheels had left behind. She turned back ahead. Still nothing. But the feeling didn't go away. She unzipped the side of her backpack and pulled out her water bottle, more to buy herself a moment than because she was thirsty. She took a sip, capped it, and listened again. Then snap. Just a small one, a twig, off the path, maybe 10 yards into the brush. Her head whipped toward the sound. Is someone there? Still nothing. Her eyes scanned the trees, trying to pierce the dimness. The green felt thicker than usual, denser. The smell of pine was sharper too, like the forest had drawn closer, narrowing its focus to the girl standing still in its spine. She stepped back, closer to her bike, fingers gripping the handlebars so tight her knuckles went pale. She looked again into the woods, toward the sound, and for the briefest second she thought she saw movement. Not big, just a shift. A shimmer of fur? A shape low to the ground? "Hello?" she said again, louder this time. Her voice echoed softly. Came back empty. Her skin prickled. Sweat gathered beneath the straps of her helmet. Whatever it was, it didn't answer, didn't show itself, didn't move again. She told herself it was probably a deer, maybe a fox, even a raccoon. But it didn't feel like a deer. It didn't feel like anything she'd seen before. She climbed back onto the bike. Her foot missed the pedal once, then found it. She pushed off. Behind her, just beyond the trees, Shadow lay still, body pressed low to the forest floor. Not because he feared her, but because he feared what fear might make her do. He hadn't meant to make a sound, but the pressure in his wounded paw had made him misstep. A mistake. Sloppy. He should have been better. He had once crossed entire fields without a leaf shifting beneath his paws. He had once learned to crawl through enemy wire in the dead of night without alerting a soul. But now, everything hurt. The side of his flank still burned from the reopened scab. His back leg trembled from overuse. His missing ear throbbed with every heartbeat. Still, he did not move. He watched her, watched the tension in her shoulders, the way she glanced back twice as she started pedaling again. She was getting nervous. He couldn't let her see him, not yet, not until she needed him. So he waited for the sound of her tires to fade into the distance, then rose again and followed. Lina rode harder than before. She didn't look back this time, not because she felt safer, but because she didn't want to see whatever might be there. She told herself she was being silly. Nana would have said it was just the woods being woods. Her dad would have said she had too much imagination for her own good, but something in her chest wouldn't let go of the unease. It was like whatever was back there wasn't just following, it was waiting. By the time she hit the next stretch of straight trail, the sun had dipped low enough that the light no longer filtered cleanly through the branches. Instead, it came in long, slanted beams, and every shadow they cast looked longer, sharper, like claws reaching across the dirt. She pressed down on the pedals harder. Her backpack bounced against her spine. The paper bag with her lunch crinkled with each jolt. She thought about stopping at the halfway rock, but changed her mind. No snacks today. No breaks. She just wanted to get home. Get out of the woods. Get away from whatever wasn't making a sound behind her. But wasn't gone either. Echo followed at a distance, limping but steady. His breath rasped in his throat, and his vision blurred every few seconds from exhaustion. But his focus never wavered. She was heading toward danger. He didn't know how he knew, only that he did. And that no matter how broken his body had become, his promise wasn't. The clearing wasn't marked on any map, but everyone under 15 in Elmridge knew about it. A broad stretch of trampled dirt and half-dead grass, surrounded by leaning pines and cigarette-burned logs, it sat like a bruise in the middle of Ashwood Hollow's trail system, a place carved out by years of boredom and unsupervised adolescence. half picnic spot, half hunting blind, all trouble. At its center, 3 boys loitered like kings with no castle. Zane Caldwell stood with one boot propped on a fallen log, squinting toward the trail with the practiced disdain of someone who thought the world owed him more than a small-town summer. His shaggy hair flopped over his brow. A vape pen flicked between his fingers like a nervous tick. To his left, Tyler Monroe sat cross-legged on a cooler, scrolling absently through his phone, though. There was no signal out here. He laughed at nothing, or maybe just laughed because the silence made him uncomfortable. The third, Griff Lott, was digging something sharp into the bark of a nearby tree. Not carving, not crafting, just destroying in the absent-minded way some boys do when they're waiting for something they don't fully understand. The air around them was thick with mid-afternoon heat and the sour chemical tang of vape clouds. Above, a hawk circled, unnoticed. "I'm bored," Griff muttered, dragging his blade deeper into the trunk. "Then go home," Zane snapped, not looking at him. Tyler snorted. "Yeah, go ask your mom to drive you to the movies. Watch something PG-13 and pretend you get the jokes." "Shut up," Griff shot back, but the sting had no teeth. The conversation fizzled, and for a while they sat in the lazy, crackling quiet that only boys like them could create, where menace brews under every joke, and boredom sharpens it like a knife on stone. Then Zane broke the silence. "She comes through here, you know." Tyler glanced up. "Who?" "That Patterson girl. What's her name?" "Lina. The redhead." Griff perked up. "Seriously?" Zane nodded, finally smiling, but it wasn't a smile that reached his eyes. "Saw her 2 days ago. Riding through with that lame backpack, like she's on some kind of adventure." "I think her mom died," Tyler offered without much feeling. "So?" Zane shrugged. "Mine left. Same difference." Griff blew out a slow stream of vapor and leaned back on his elbows. "I mean, she's kind of cute." Zane turned toward him, lips twisting. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "No," Tyler said immediately, shaking his head. "Come on, man. Don't be weird." "I'm not being weird," Zane replied coolly. "I'm saying she thinks she can just pass through like this is a nature trail. Someone ought to remind her this ain't the suburbs. She's like 12, dude." Zane's smile widened, still not reaching his eyes. "So?" The moment hung in the air, heavy and wrong, the kind of moment people look back on years later, wishing someone had said more, done more, walked away, but none of them did, because Zane had that kind of gravity, the kind that made weaker boys orbit him, even when they knew they were spinning too close to the fire. Griff shrugged. "If she's dumb enough to ride through alone again." Zane nodded. "Exactly." Tyler hesitated, then said nothing. The sun burned overhead. Sweat pooled in the hollows of their shirts. Time moved slowly, but the tension grew by degrees. They took turns with the vape, talked about things they didn't understand, girls, parties, fights they hadn't been in. Griff tried to light a dried pine cone with a matchstick and failed. Tyler laughed again, too loud. Zane kept glancing toward the trail, waiting. "She's late," he muttered finally. Griff threw a rock at a can. "Maybe she got smart." "Doubt it." A breeze stirred the treetops. Pine needles whispered above. The birds quieted for just a moment, so brief none of them noticed. But something else did. 50 meters back, hidden deep in the shadows, a pair of amber eyes locked on the clearing, motionless, silent, watching. Shadow had arrived. He hadn't meant to come this close, not yet. But the scent was unmistakable, male, young, aggressive, pack mentality. He'd known that smell from other places, broken schools, broken systems, and broken boys who looked just like this. The girl was heading straight toward them, and the wind told him all he needed to know. He stepped behind a thick trunk and stilled his breath. One of the boys, Griff, tilted his head suddenly. "Did you hear that?" Tyler looked up. "What? Thought I heard something." Zane rolled his eyes. "It's the woods, genius. They make noise." Still, Griff squinted into the trees for a second longer than necessary. Shadow didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. He had learned once, long ago, how to become part of the landscape, how to blend into places where danger whispered rather than roared, how to wait for the right moment, not to strike, but to shield. He was no stranger to bullies, and he could smell the storm gathering before the first word was even spoken. He backed into the brush again, gently, carefully, not retreating, just preparing. Zane rose from the log and cracked his knuckles. "She's coming," he said quietly, as if the forest itself had whispered the update. Tyler looked around. "You sure?" Zane's mouth curled. "I can feel it." And behind the trees, half hidden in shadow and scars, the dog who had once walked through fire lowered himself into a crouch. Not out of fear, but out of readiness. Because the girl was coming, and the clearing wasn't safe. Not yet. The moment Lina entered the clearing, she knew something was wrong. The air felt too still, the silence too rehearsed. Her tires crunched over the dry dirt, but no birds sang overhead, no breeze moved the pines, just the kind of quiet that hides teeth behind smiles. Then she saw them. 3 boys. Zane was the first to move. He stepped forward like he'd been waiting all day, his face curved into a grin that had no warmth in it. Tyler sat up straighter, shoving something into his pocket. Griff cracked his knuckles against the bark of the tree he'd been carving. Lina's legs tightened instinctively. Her fingers gripped the brakes. "Hey, Red," Zane called, taking a slow step toward her. "Didn't expect to see you out here today." She tried to keep her voice level. "I'm just passing through." Zane's smile grew. "Looks like you passed through the wrong spot." Lina said nothing. She considered backing up, just turning the bike around, cutting through the tree line and going the long way home. But her heart was hammering now. If she moved too fast, it might be worse. "Isn't it past your bedtime?" Griff added with a chuckle, swaggering out from behind the tree. Lina tried to steer around them, choosing the left edge of the clearing. Tyler stepped sideways. Now they were a wall. "I said, I'm just passing through," she repeated more forcefully this time. Zane tilted his head. "That's what they all say, huh?" Lina didn't wait for a reply. She surged forward. Zane's hand snapped out and grabbed her handlebar. The bike stopped cold, nearly throwing her over the frame. Lina gasped, tried to pull it free, but his grip tightened. "Let go!" she yelled. Griff laughed. "Whoa, temper, temper." Zane's eyes narrowed, not angry, just entertained, like a cat watching a bird in a box. "Don't you want to hang out a bit?" he said. "Let go!" Lina yanked hard. The bike tipped sideways. She stumbled and fell, elbow hitting the dirt hard. Her helmet cracked slightly to the side. Pain shot up her arm. Her backpack slipped off her shoulder and spilled open books, a water bottle, a sandwich bag, a sketch pad. The sketch pad landed face up, open to a drawing she hadn't meant to show anyone. It was a picture of her mom, half finished. Zane noticed. He bent down and picked it up, flipping through the pages with careless fingers. "What's this? Your little diary?" "Give it back," Lina said, struggling to her feet. "Right now." Zane ignored her. "This your mommy?" he asked, holding the page up to show the others. Tyler looked uncomfortable now. "Come on, man." But Zane wasn't done. "She's the one who died, right? In that accident? Car flipped or something?" Lina's breath caught. Her fists clenched. "Give it back," she whispered. Zane held the sketchbook just out of reach. "Did she scream, you think? When the glass shattered? Did she call your name?" Griff chuckled, low and uncertain. Lina lunged. Her fingers almost reached the paper before Zane shoved her backward. She hit the dirt again, this time scraping her knee. Blood bloomed through the torn fabric of her jeans. "Oops," Zane said. Something inside Lina snapped. She stood again, this time faster, face flushed with pain and fury. "You're a coward." Zane's grin faltered just a little. "What'd you say? You think hurting someone smaller makes you strong?" For a second, just one, no one moved. Even the woods seemed to listen. Then Zane dropped the sketchbook. His hand closed around her shoulder and shoved her hard enough that she stumbled back onto her hands. "Shut up," he said flatly. Lina coughed. Dust filled her mouth. Her eyes burned. Griff shifted on his feet. Tyler looked away. Zane took a step closer. She closed her eyes. And that's when the rustling started. Not behind her, not from the trail, from the trees. A low growl. Quiet at first, more vibration than sound, but it grew, rough, raw, feral. All three boys turned. At the edge of the clearing between the shadows and the sunlight, something stepped out. Shadow, limping, scarred, one ear missing, blood crusted in the fur of his flank. But still he stood like a storm rising from the roots of the earth. His lips curled back just slightly, exposing jagged teeth. He didn't bark. He didn't charge. He just stared straight at Zane and growled. A sound like thunder in a cave. "What the hell?" Griff whispered. "Is that a coyote?" Tyler asked, taking a step back. "No," Zane said, his voice suddenly quieter. "It's a dog." But his hand slipped off Lina's shoulder. She pulled herself upright, wincing, and backed away from all of them, toward the trees, toward the thing that somehow didn't feel like a threat anymore. Zane tried to recover. Stupid mutt. He grabbed a rock and hurled it. It hit Shadow on the side. The dog didn't flinch, didn't yelp. He simply advanced one step closer, and then another. Zane backed up. Now the fear showed in his face. "Let's go," Tyler muttered, already moving. "But," Griff started. "Let's go!" All three of them turned and bolted, pushing past each other, tripping over roots, scrambling into the trees like shadows fleeing the light. Lina stared after them, panting, then looked at the dog. He stared back, bleeding, breathing heavily, standing still, between her and danger. She didn't speak, didn't move. Then without a word she threw her leg over the bike, snatched up her backpack, and pedaled away. Fast, faster than before. But not because she was afraid of the dog, because she didn't understand him. The woods held their breath. Even the trees seemed to draw inward as Lina scrambled backward in the dirt, blood dripping from her scraped knees, chest rising and falling with panic. Her drawing lay trampled in the dust. Her voice lost somewhere between fury and fear hung silent in the clearing. Zane stood frozen, rock still clenched in one hand, his bravado cracking at the edges. Griff shifted beside him, suddenly unsure. Tyler had already taken a half-step back, phone gripped uselessly like a weapon that would never fire. Then it came. From the edge of the woods, just beyond the dappled light, a shape moved. Not fast, not reckless, precise, deliberate, terrifying. A burst of muscle and matted fur erupted from the undergrowth with a snarl that cut through the air like a blade. The sound was not bark, not warning, not show. It was promise. Shadow. He didn't run, he charged. His gait uneven, back leg dragging slightly, but every pound of his frame carried with it the weight of experience, of pain survived, of a mission rekindled. One ear gone, a long scar across his flank. And yet, the moment his paws hit the clearing, there was no mistaking who was in control. Zane stumbled backward, dropping the rock. "Jesus, what is that?" Griff turned to run, but Shadow was already between them and her. Positioned like a statue carved from fury, he didn't lunge, he didn't chase. He stood, head lowered, teeth bared, just enough. Shoulders squared in front of Lina, bleeding, breathless, still trying to process what was happening. Shadow growled low, a sound like gravel breaking under pressure. The boys froze. Then, "Throw something!" Zane shouted, panic cracking his voice. Tyler hesitated. Griff didn't. He scooped a rock and hurled it. The jagged stone sailed, struck Shadow on his already scarred side with a dull, sickening thud. Lina winced. Shadow didn't flinch. He didn't yelp, didn't move, just growled louder, deeper. Something in that growl shifted the air. It wasn't rage, it was restraint, because that's what made him terrifying. He could, but chose not to. Zane didn't wait. "Screw this, we're out!" He bolted into the trees. Griff followed, then Tyler, slipping on pine needles as they disappeared into the brush, crashing and panting, like prey, with their own heartbeat in their ears. And just like that, the clearing was still. Only the wind remained, and the dog, and the girl. Lina didn't move. Shadow turned to face her, body battered but upright. His flank rose and fell. Blood seeped through his fur. His eyes, amber, cracked with age and memory, met hers. She didn't see a monster. Not anymore. But she couldn't process him either. Her hands shook as she fumbled for her backpack, grabbing it with trembling fingers. Her gaze never left him. He took a step toward her. "Just one." She gasped, threw her bike between them like a shield. I don't know what you are," she whispered, her voice raw. Shadow stopped, didn't approach, just stared. Lina backed toward her bike, hopped on, wobbling. She looked back once, just once. He hadn't moved, still guarding, still watching, still bleeding. And then she was gone. Tires spinning, heart pounding, breath hitching as she rode away from the clearing, from the fear, from him. Shadow stood alone. The birds returned, chirping hesitantly. A breeze stirred the leaves, cooling the gash in his side. He lowered himself to the earth, exhaled once long and quiet, then stood again. His limp worsened, but he did not stop. He followed, 50 meters back, like always, like before, because some instincts never die, and this girl wasn't safe yet. The wind whipped past Lina's face as she flew down the dirt trail, branches slashing at her arms like claws from the underbrush. Her breath came in panicked gasps, mouth dry, legs aching as the bike jostled beneath her. Every creak of the chain, every crack of a twig, felt like an echo of the thing behind her. The wild dog, the monster, the shadow. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, louder than the tires skimming gravel, louder than the leaves tearing beside her. She didn't look back. Couldn't. Because if she did, and it was there, if those jagged teeth and haunted eyes were inches from her, she didn't know if her legs would keep moving. All she had was speed and fear and the voice of memory whispering from the dark. The wind suddenly shifted, and so did the world. In her mind, she wasn't on the trail anymore. She was in the passenger seat of the car, her mother's hand on the wheel. Music playing, something soft, the sun cutting golden lines across the windshield. Then, the deer, the swerve, the flash of headlights, metal screaming. Lina blinked hard. The memory fought to surface. Her mother's scream had been short. Not a wail, not drawn out, just one sharp breath cut off by shattering glass. The image burned behind her eyes. Blood on the dashboard, a hand that stopped moving, a smell she couldn't forget, burnt oil and lilies from her mom's perfume. The bike wobbled. She shook her head, forcing herself back to now. To the trail, to survival. Behind her, was it footsteps? She couldn't be sure. The thudding in her chest was too loud. She risked a glance. There, just beyond the curve in the path, something moved. 4 legs, one limping, still coming, still following. "Oh, God," she choked, pedaling harder. Why won't it stop? Why was it chasing her? Had she looked into its eyes too long? Had it picked up her scent? Was she prey now? Lina's mind spun like the wheels beneath her. Tears blurred her vision. Her scraped knee throbbed with every pump of her leg. The bike hit a rock and jounced. She nearly lost control. But didn't stop. Couldn't. Far behind, hidden in the blur of green and dust, Shadow ran. Not with the grace he once had. His gait was broken, one paw dragging slightly. His ribs ached from the rock, his scars raw again from the sprint. But he didn't slow. Not when the girl's blood still scented the air. Not when he could still hear her sobbing breath from meters away. Something about her size, her scent, the way she looked over her shoulder with fear so thick it trembled. It lit something in him. A memory without sound. A boy once like her. Smoke in the sky. Screams in the dark. A choice made. One he hadn't been able to forget. Shadow kept to the trees where he could. His figure slipped between trunks, hidden by shade, but his eyes never left her. She was hurting. She was running. But not just from him. From something else. Something older. Some wounds, he knew, weren't just on the outside. Lina's breathing broke into sobs. She didn't know where she was on the trail anymore. Everything looked the same. The trees closed in like bars. Shadows stretched long across the path. The sun was lower now, the gold dimming to amber, then rust. If she didn't reach the bridge before dark, no. She didn't finish the thought. Her legs moved faster, one after the other, fueled by something primal. Fear, yes, but also something deeper. That scream in the car, that last breath of her mother's voice. And now this dog, this thing. Why was it still behind her? She'd left the clearing, left the bullies, left the blood. But it kept coming. Was it hungry? Was it trained to hunt? What kind of dog looked like that, half dead and still moving like it had orders? Tears rolled down her cheeks, hot and sharp. "I'm not ready," she whispered to herself. She didn't know what she meant. She just kept going. Shadow slowed at one point. His side burned from the bruise. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by ache. But he saw her still moving, still fast. She was strong, even in fear. She reminded him of the other one, the boy in the burning house, the one he'd carried through smoke and ash, the boy who'd held his fur tight with tiny fingers, who'd whispered, "Stay." But Echo hadn't stayed. He hadn't made it back. Until now. Ahead, Lina saw something glint. The bridge. Yes. She pushed harder. The sound of rushing water beneath the wood called to her. The trail narrowed. The trees began to open. One last hill. One last curve. She didn't look back again, but she felt it. Still behind her. Still coming. And so they moved, one after the other. A girl haunted by loss. A dog haunted by memory. Neither of them knowing yet that what chased her wasn't meant to harm, it was meant to save. The gravel road that skirted Ashwood Hollow was quiet most afternoons, just the occasional pickup, maybe the crunch of tires from a mail van, or the distant hum of cicadas tucked beneath the low branches. But today, it wasn't the sound that turned heads. It was the blur, a streak of motion, a girl on a bike, legs pumping furiously, hair flying wild behind her like a warning flag. Her face flushed, lips tight, eyes locked forward like if she blinked, she'd break apart. And then, a few seconds later, from the porch of a faded blue house, Mr. Abbott sat with a cup of tea that had long gone cold. He was a man who noticed things. 32 years in the fire department had taught him that danger didn't always come loud. Sometimes it came quietly on the wind, in a look, in the sudden stillness of birds. So when Lina tore past, not looking side to side, not noticing the truck parked crooked near the post office or the loose dog barking from a fenced yard, he knew she wasn't just riding, she was fleeing. He stood slowly, his knees cracking. And then he saw it. The second figure lumbering behind her, maybe 60 yards back. Not fast, but steady. A German shepherd, ribs showing through matted fur, left ear missing, a limp in its hind leg, but its head was up, eyes locked forward, and something in the way it moved. It wasn't just wandering, it was tracking. A passing car slowed, the driver staring through the window. Then another pulled up across the street. Mrs. Carmen, who ran the florist stand near the corner, leaned over her bucket of sunflowers and muttered, "That the Rose girl?" The man beside her nodded, phone already in hand. She looked scared out of her skin. "And that dog, did you see the blood?" "Bet it's rabid." "She was bleeding too, wasn't she?" The buzz began, subtle at first, then louder. A girl, a chase, a stray, and the kindling of panic that small towns never let go to waste. Mr. Abbott reached for the old radio set by his porch swing. He hadn't used it since the floods 2 summers ago, but his fingers still knew the dials. "Dispatch, this is Harold Abbott on Cloverfield and Ashwood Trail. We got a situation, possible injured child, possible aggressive dog, both moving fast toward the bridge. You copy?" Crackle, then a voice. "Copy that, Harold. Anyone hurt?" "Not sure, but she's got blood on her leg. And the shepherd, he's limping bad. Looks like an old scar on his side reopened." "Understood. Units en route." "Thanks, Harold." He clicked off, staring after the dust still settling where the girl had passed. "She's not just riding scared," he said aloud to no one. "She's being followed." A few blocks down, a teen named Avery stood frozen outside the auto shop where he was learning to change brake pads. He'd seen Lina fly past, nearly blowing the corner. He'd seen the dog, too. And he remembered what his cousin told him last summer about a shepherd at the county shelter. The one that didn't bark, the one that didn't break when they tried to euthanize him. The dog, they swore, had seen war. Could it be the same? He didn't know, but he filmed it anyway. Shaky hands, quick pan from girl to dog, and within minutes the video hit the town's local Facebook group, captioned, "Stray chasing girl down hollow trail call, someone now." In the grocery store, someone gasped watching the clip. By the lake, an old man asked, "Was that the Rose girl?" The fear multiplied. Because small towns don't forget loss easily. And they all remembered Lina's mother, and the accident, and the way grief looked when it had no more words. But no one, not one voice, asked the only question that mattered. What if the dog wasn't chasing her? What if he was guiding, protecting, bleeding for her? In a side room of the police station, Officer Mara Vance set down her mug mid-sip. Her phone buzzed. The video played. Her brow furrowed. That dog. She leaned closer, rewound, played again. The shepherd wasn't charging, not snapping, not lunging, just following. Steady, deliberate. She stood and grabbed her keys. "Something's wrong," she muttered. "Very wrong." And on the road, wheels still spinning, lungs still burning, Lina pushed on. No time to think, only to ride, only to survive. And behind her, limping through the dust and wind, the shadow never stopped. The bridge appeared like salvation, old and weather-beaten, its slats bowed with time, rails worn smooth by years of wind and rain. But to Lina, it looked like the finish line of every nightmare she'd ever tried to outrun. She didn't hesitate. Tires hit the planks with a wooden clatter. The sound echoed sharp across the creek below. Birds startled from branches above, taking flight like a cloud breaking open. She pushed harder. Almost there, but then a growl, low, guttural, not from behind, from ahead. Lina jerked her head up. 3 dogs stood at the far end of the bridge, stocky, square-jawed, all muscle and teeth. Their cropped ears twitched. Dirty collars hung from thick necks. Pit bulls. Granger's junkyard dogs. The biggest, bone-white with a scar across its snout, took 1 step forward and bared its teeth. The second, black, heavy-breathing, lowered its head. The third, a brindle mix, let out a short, sharp bark. Lina's breath caught. She skidded to a stop mid-bridge, heart pounding like a war drum. She looked left. The drop into Ashwood Creek was steep and rocky. To the right, thick brush, brambles, and no way through fast enough. And behind her, she didn't need to look. She felt him, the dog, the shadow, coming closer. The girl froze in place, trapped between fear and fury. Tears stung her eyes. She dropped the bike, metal clattering against the planks. "No, no, no, no," she whispered. On the far side, the white pit bull lunged once, testing the line of fear in the air. The other 2 followed suit, slowly advancing, and Lina did the only thing she could. She screamed, a piercing, ragged cry that cracked the silence of the hollow and threw her panic into the sky. She didn't scream words, just sound, just raw, helpless sound. And that's when Shadow appeared, from the edge of the bridge behind her, bloodied, limping, but alive. He didn't bark, didn't growl yet. He charged, fur rippling, muscles coiling, eyes locked ahead. He flew down the bridge, not past her, not around her, toward the threat. Lina turned, eyes wide with disbelief. For 1 blinding second, time slowed. She saw the tears on her arm, the streaks of blood on her legs, the pain in her body, and then she saw him, not chasing her, but running through her fear, toward the danger. The pit bulls didn't move at first. They had never seen something like this half-ruined creature barreling toward them, not barking to warn, not hesitating to bluff, just coming, like a soldier with no orders left but one: protect. And as Shadow neared the center of the bridge, the brindle snapped, lunged, and the clash began. Lina screamed again, but this time it was the scream of someone watching violence unfold with no power to stop it. Shadow collided with the brindle mid-leap. They hit the planks hard, claws skidding, jaws snapping. Blood sprayed across the rail as the dog yelped. The black pit bull joined, biting at Shadow's flank. Shadow twisted, using the bridge wall to slam the second dog off. Then the white one was on him, larger, stronger. All three tore into him, but Shadow didn't stop. He didn't even seem to notice his own blood. He fought like something that had already died once and refused to do it again. Lina backed against the railing, hands trembling. The wood behind her creaked under her weight. Her eyes were wide with shock, heart threatening to explode. She'd never seen an animal fight like that. Not just to survive, but to shield. Every time a dog lunged her way, Shadow stepped in front. Every bite he took was one that wasn't meant for him. Every growl he gave seemed to say, "You will not touch her." The brindle yelped first, thrown into the creek with a vicious whip of Shadow's jaw. The black one stumbled, limping from a blow to the shoulder, then bolted into the woods. The white one, snarling, bleeding, stood its ground. For a moment, it and Shadow stared, both covered in wounds, both panting, both refusing to fall. Then, in one last blur of motion, Shadow lunged. The white pit bull gave one last bark and turned tail, disappearing into the trees. Silence returned, except for the sound of Lina crying. She collapsed to her knees on the bridge, chest heaving. Shadow turned to her, legs shaking, coat soaked in red. He took 2 steps forward, then paused. Their eyes met, not as predator and prey, but as something far more complex, a bond that hadn't yet found a name. Then suddenly, Lina grabbed her bike, hurled it between them. The metal skidded and clanged. She didn't speak, just turned and ran into the trees, down the trail, away. Shadow didn't follow. He stood there, alone on the bridge, legs wobbling beneath him. Then slowly, painfully, he lowered himself to the wooden planks, blood dripping between the boards, and waited. The wooden bridge groaned beneath the weight of fury. Shadow lunged forward, no hesitation in his battered frame, only instinct. One ear twitched, what was left of it. Blood still stained his flank from earlier, but it didn't matter now. There were 3 of them, and only him. But he wasn't fighting for himself. Not this time. The brindle pit bull reached him first. It snapped, lunged with practiced cruelty. But Shadow dropped low-ducked under the bite and slammed upward. His shoulder collided with the brindle's chest like a hammer, lifting it off the planks. The dog flew sideways, legs flailing, and smacked the railing with a yelp that splintered wood. Shadow didn't wait. He turned faster than his wounds should allow, and met the second, a thick, black pit bull with cold eyes and a snarl built from years of junkyard guarding. This one didn't flinch. It attacked with power. They clashed in the center of the bridge, teeth on teeth, flesh on wood, claws scratching for grip. Shadow took the first bite to the neck, too slow to evade, but turned into it, letting the teeth sink shallow before whipping his head sideways and tearing free. Blood spattered the boards. His blood. He didn't care. The black pit bull bit again, this time at Shadow's side. But Shadow pivoted, sank his teeth into the dog's shoulder, and didn't let go. They thrashed together, sliding across the bridge like broken machines in collision. The sound of splintering wood echoed below them as they slammed against the railing. Shadow let go, then used the momentum to throw the dog to the side. It crashed, groaned, and rolled, limping to its feet, whimpering now. 2 down. But the worst came last. The white one, the leader. The one with eyes that weren't rabid, just cold, measured. It stepped forward slowly, sizing Shadow up. Its chest bore a long, healed scar, its paws planted wide, its tail didn't wag, and Shadow recognized it. A fighter, a survivor, like him. They circled each other, blood dripping from jaws, paws soaked in mud and crimson. The bridge creaked, caught between 2 forces, with nothing left to lose. Lina was nowhere to be seen, gone down the trail, fleeing into the woods. But Shadow didn't look back, because he remembered a different child, a smaller one, a boy named Benji, the one he'd pulled from fire, the one who screamed when they were separated, the one he'd failed to follow. Not this time. Not again. The white pit bull lunged. Teeth met teeth, bone met bone. They crashed together like thunder, raw, savage, unfiltered. No mercy, no tactics, just survival. Shadow twisted, bit at the leg, tore away, and circled behind. The pit bull snapped, caught Shadow's rear leg. Shadow yelped, genuine pain, but used it, rolled over, kicked upward with all his strength. The pit bull stumbled, and that was the opening. Shadow rose, threw his full weight forward, and clamped down on the dog's neck. It thrashed, howled, blood sprayed onto the railing. Shadow held, tighter, until finally the pit bull whimpered and went still. Not dead, but defeated. The bridge, now stained with blood and fur and pain, fell silent again. Shadow stood over the white dog for 1 more second, chest heaving, then staggered backward. His leg gave out. He fell to his side, panting hard. His body screamed at him to stop. But something deeper inside, the same thing that made him follow Lina for 8 kilometers, told him, not yet, not until she's safe. Far down the trail, in the distance, barely a sound, bike tires fading. Shadow let his head fall against the wood, the blood pooling beneath him, his breath shallow. But he didn't sleep, didn't rest, not yet. He had 1 more fight in him if he had to, because that's what soldiers do, even when they're broken, even when they've been forgotten. They protect, especially when no one else can. Lina stood at the edge of the trail, barely able to breathe. Her hands trembled, still gripped around the handlebar as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the earth. Her knees were scraped open, blood mixed with dust and sweat. Her left sock soaked red from the ankle down. Her chest rose and fell in ragged heaves, and her lips, bitten raw, whispered something she wasn't even aware of. No, 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 no. Because she had turned back. She had to see. She had to know. What happened on that bridge? And now she stood there, watching the aftermath unfold like a memory she'd never forget. The wood was stained red, red in thick smears, red in splattered bursts. 3 pit bulls lay strewn across the bridge, 2 unconscious, 1 limping away into the trees with its tail between its legs. And at the center, battered, torn, still bleeding from the flank, stood the dog that had followed her since the forest. Shadow. or whatever his real name was. He stood still, his legs trembling beneath him, chest heaving, blood dripping from the torn flesh near his jaw. But his eyes, those weren't wild. They were steady, fixed, on her. Lina took a step back, then another. "No," she said out loud, voice cracking. "No, stay back." The dog didn't move, didn't snarl, didn't bark. He just looked at her like he'd been waiting years to find someone to protect, and maybe longer to be understood. Lina's legs buckled and she dropped to one knee, sobbing, her vision blurred, tears mixing with the sweat on her face, blinding her to everything except the shape of him. The dog that everyone would say was dangerous, the dog who'd never left her side, the dog now bleeding because of her. And yet, still watching her like she was the only thing that mattered. Her breathing quickened, short, sharp bursts. The air felt too thin, her heart too loud, and the panic returned, not from the pit bulls, not from the bridge, but from him, from what it all meant. She grabbed her bike hands, fumbling with the chain that had half slipped in the chaos. Shadow took one small step forward, just one, but to Lina it was too much. She screamed, loud, high-pitched, pure fear from somewhere deep inside the part of her that still hadn't healed from the last goodbye she never got to say to her mother. "Stay away!" She grabbed the frame of her bike and hurled it between them, not to hurt him, but to build a wall she could escape behind. The bike landed with a clatter, skidding across the boards, stopping inches from Shadow's paws. He didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there, blood trailing from his shoulder, watching her. And in that silence broken only by the hum of cicadas and the gentle creak of the bridge liner, turned and ran. She didn't look back, not once. Her breath rattled in her throat. Her shoes hit the dirt hard, stumbling down the trail she barely remembered. Her mind raced with too many truths to hold all at once. He saved me. But he's dangerous. He followed me. But he never touched me. He bled for me. But I still can't trust him. The contradiction stabbed like glass in her ribs. Behind her, Shadow stood still. For a long moment he simply stared after her. Then, slowly, he limped over to the bike, sniffed it. A trace of her scent lingered there. Fear, blood, sweat, something like lemon shampoo. He nudged the pedal with his nose, then gently pushed it upright again. It wobbled, fell sideways. He didn't try again. Instead, he lay down right there on the same bridge where pain and loyalty had clashed just minutes before. Not because he was giving up, but because for now he'd done what he came to do, and if she needed more time to understand, he would wait, even if it cost him everything. The sun had already dipped low enough to paint the horizon with a bruised shade of amber. From the porch of a weathered, clapboard house tucked just beyond the trees, Mr. Ellsworth sat in his rickety lawn chair, legs crossed, fingers wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug. His binoculars, old, army issue, with the leather strap worn to threads, rested in his lap. It had been a quiet day, until it wasn't. A sound faint but urgent had stirred him. A scream. Then another. Then silence. And now, through the thickening shadows, he saw it unfold. He lifted the binoculars slowly, adjusting the focus with careful fingers. His cataracts blurred the edges, but the center came clear just enough. A bridge, blood, a bike cast aside, and a child running, but not chased, guarded. He saw the dog, large, black and tan, German shepherd, if his old eyes served him right, scarred, one ear missing, flank soaked in blood, but he stood like a soldier who had known pain long before today. The dog didn't move, didn't chase after the girl, didn't growl, didn't lunge. He just waited. And Mr. Ellsworth knew. He knew before the phone calls would come, before the rumors would stir, before the town would draw lines in the sand about strays and danger and wild dogs with blood on their teeth, because he had seen enough in this life to recognize the difference between a predator and a protector. He whispered, half to himself, half to the quiet woods around him, "That dog ain't chasing her. He's guarding her." He leaned back slowly in his chair, never taking his eyes off the bridge. The girl was gone now, vanished into the forest path. But the shepherd remained, bleeding, still, loyal to a cause only he seemed to understand. And something in that stirred something old in Mr. Ellsworth's chest, something from a war long past. From the day he held a rifle he was too young to carry, and a dog named Cooper refused to leave his side after shrapnel tore into his thigh. That same look, that same silence. Some bonds were deeper than language. He set the binoculars down, gently, like one might lower a flag, then reached inside his vest pocket for the flip phone he kept mostly for emergencies and birthdays. The buttons were too small for his fingers now, but he pressed the one marked Thelma. A few rings. Then a voice answered, sharp with worry. "Ellsworth, is everything all right?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked again through the darkening trees. "You told me Lina was riding home through Ashwood, didn't you?" "Yes," she insisted. "Why?" "You need to call Eli, and maybe the police, too." What happened?" He took a breath. "There's blood on the bridge, Thelma. Lots of it. Oh, God. But listen to me real careful now." He paused, eyes narrowing as the dog finally sat down, barely able to keep upright. "That shepherd of hers, or whatever he is? What about him? He just saved your granddaughter's life." He hung up before she could answer. Because some things didn't need explanation. Some things just needed to be seen. And thanks to a pair of dusty binoculars and a porch no one ever looked twice at, someone had seen the truth. The whole thing. And that changed everything. As the first stars began to prick the sky, Mr. Ellsworth stayed in his chair, the phone still warm in his palm. He poured the rest of his cold coffee onto the grass, then whispered again, not to Thelma this time, not to the dog, not even to the wind, but to something deeper, something older. Sometimes the ones they fear the most are the only ones left who still protect. Thelma Rose had always been steady in her hands. She could stitch a quilt in stormlight, trim rose bushes with military precision, and butter toast without a single crumb falling. But this time her hands were shaking. The binoculars clattered onto the kitchen table as she fumbled with her phone. Her voice cracked before she even hit dial. "Come on, come on." The screen blinked once, then connected. On the other end, the rumble of machinery, a nail gun, and the distant whistle of classic rock bled through. Then a voice, muffled by work. "Yeah?" Eli, it's Mama Lina's in trouble." Silence. Then a shift in tone. "What do you mean? What happened?" "Ellsworth just called. Said there was blood on the Ashwood Bridge. He saw her ride through and... Eli, there was a dog. A big one. He said it wasn't chasing her. It was protecting her. But something went wrong. You need to come home. Now." A sharp inhale, then the sound of tools dropping. "I'm on my way." Click. No questions, no hesitation, just movement. Across town, in a cluttered office above the Elm Ridge courthouse, Officer Mara Vance was reviewing paperwork. It had been a slow day until the phone started ringing. Then it didn't stop. The first was from Mr. Abbott, the retired firefighter who now ran the antique store. His voice trembled. "Saw a girl, Lina, I think, bike flying down Main. She was crying, blood on her knee. And there was this dog, German Shepherd, scarred all over, limping but staying close. I don't like the look of it, Mara." Before she could answer, line 2 lit up. Then her radio chirped. "Unit 12, you got anything on a child in distress over near Ashwood Creek?" She pressed the call receiver between her shoulder and ear, already reaching for her keys. "Not yet. What have you got?" "Caller said a dog was chasing a girl, screamed something about the bridge." Mara's stomach tightened. Then came line 3, Mrs. Durant, whose house backed up to Ashwood's North Trail. "That old bridge is cursed, I'm telling you. My Henry said he saw blood and fur all over. And those Granger pit bulls were loose again. You need to do something." Mara stood up, voice clipped, calm but cold. "I'm on it." Back at the hardware site, Eli Rose was already in his truck. The engine hadn't even warmed when he peeled out of the lot. Nails, sweat, and calluses still clung to his palms as he gripped the steering wheel. The road blurred beneath him, but in his mind, images came sharp and cruel. Lina as a toddler, dragging a blanket behind her. Lina at 8, peering through a tent flap, whispering about forest fairies. Lina, just this morning, saying, "I can do it, Dad. I'm not a baby anymore." And now blood, a dog, Ashwood. Please, just let her be okay. He didn't know who he was praying to, but he did it anyway. Mara's cruiser sliced through downtown like a blue bullet. Sirens off, lights flashing. She preferred stealth. This was Elm Ridge, not the kind of place where things happened. And yet somehow the town had erupted in whispers that felt like wildfire. At the coffee shop, they say the girl's missing. At the diner, she's been chased all the way from the woods. On porch radios and between backyard fences, the shepherd's back. By the time Mara passed Abbott's storefront, 3 teenagers had posted shaky video clips of a limping beast trailing a girl down Ridgeview. By the time she turned onto Hollow Creek Road, one local blogger had uploaded a grainy still of what appeared to be blood-streaked paw prints on the Ashwood Bridge. By the time she reached the base of the trail, 2 more calls came in. One from a hiker who said she heard screams and barking, and one from a boy who swore he saw a ghost dog with only one ear. In the span of 12 minutes, the story had gone from a girl on a bike to a child under attack to a rogue beast in the woods. And none of it felt right. Mara knew dogs. She trusted them, even more than some people. But that trust didn't mean denial. She pressed her foot harder on the gas. In 3 corners of Elm Ridge, threads of panic wove tighter. Grandma Thelma, clutching the phone, rocking back and forth, eyes fixed on the horizon. Eli racing down county roads, gravel spitting under his tires like sparks. Mara cutting through back roads, every fiber in her body pulled toward a bridge no one cared about, until today, and in the middle of it all. A girl no older than 12, and a dog that no one had wanted, but who refused to leave her side. The truck roared like a wounded animal as Eli gripped the wheel, his knuckles bone white. Gravel pinged against the undercarriage. His pulse drummed louder than the engine. His daughter was somewhere in that chaos between rumor and fear, blood and barking, and he wasn't there. "Damn it, Carol, you were right." The name escaped like a ghost from his chest. Her name. His wife's. The woman who had once warned him, again and again, not to overprotect Lina, to trust that their daughter could learn to navigate fear, not just hide from it. But Eli hadn't listened. Flashback. 2 years earlier. Late summer. Porch lights humming. A firefly landing on Carol's wrist. Lina, age 10, asleep inside with her stuffed rabbit tucked beneath her chin. Carol turned to him then, her voice soft but laced with fire. "You shelter her too much, Eli. The world's gonna scare her either way. Wouldn't you rather she meets it knowing she has strength, not just shelter?" Eli had looked away, jaw tight. "What's wrong with keeping her safe?" Carol had sighed. "Because one day, you won't be there to do it." He hadn't answered. He'd just stared into the darkness beyond the porch, as if the future were already waiting there, grinning. Now. That memory crushed into the present as Eli slammed the brakes in front of the house. He hadn't even fully exited the truck when he heard it. "Dad!" A scream. A tear-streaked, ragged scream that nearly brought him to his knees. Lina burst through the back gate like a comet of panic and dirt. Her hair was matted, one arm bloodied. She stumbled, caught herself, then ran straight into his chest. "It followed me the whole way." What did?" Eli knelt, gripping her shoulders, searching her face for something, anything he could fix. "The dog," she cried. "It wouldn't stop. I tried, I ran, I thought it was gonna—" She choked, the words strangling each other. Her small hands dug into his flannel shirt like she was anchoring herself to earth. Eli swept her into his arms, carried her the way he used to when she was too tired to walk after long hikes with Carol. She trembled, cheeks pressed against his collarbone. From the corner of his eye, movement. He turned, and there it was. The dog, limping, bleeding, scarred, and staring directly at them from beyond the fence. Eli froze. It didn't bark, didn't growl. It just stood there, head low, tail still, one ear torn clean away, the other flicking with every distant sound. It looked like a creature born from fire and war, like something the world had tried to break and failed. Eli's instincts roared to life. He set Lina down gently and marched toward the shed, fumbled with the latch, grabbed the shovel leaning against the wall. The dog stepped forward. Lina's breath caught. "Dad, no!" "Get inside," Eli barked. "Please, don't hurt him." But the dog was coming closer now, slow, deliberate, a dragging back paw leaving a smear of blood on the grass. Eli raised the shovel, and then a flash of red and blue, tires skidding, Officer Mara Vance's voice cutting through the dusk. "Eli, don't!" He froze mid-swing. The dog stopped, sat. Its chest heaved, but it made no move, just watched them, the kind of stillness that came not from submission, but survival. Eli turned to Mara. "It was following her, the whole time. Look at it, it's torn up, and it kept coming." "I know," she said calmly, approaching. "I've had 3 calls saying the same thing, but no one said it attacked." Lina stepped forward then, timid. "He never touched me." Mara's eyes flicked between father and daughter, then to the dog. "Sometimes what looks like a chase is really an escort." Eli's hands fell to his sides. The shovel dropped with a dull thud onto the grass. For a moment the 3 of them just stood there, in a triangle of misunderstanding, blood, and a growing silence that felt sacred. And at the center, the dog, not lunging, not snarling, just waiting, as if it knew this moment would come, as if this was the part of the story no one ever believes until it's too real to ignore. The wind picked up. It carried the smell of blood, sweat, and damp summer earth. Shadows stretched long across the Rose family yard as the sun dipped behind the hills, washing the sky in bruised orange, and then a low, rhythmic thump against the dry grass. Shadow. He limped into the clearing like a ghost returning to the battlefield, each step deliberate, measured, pain clearly written in every twitch of muscle. His paw dragged slightly behind him, leaving a red trail like punctuation on a page no one wanted to read. Lina stood frozen, just behind her father. "It's him," she whispered. "The same dog." Shadow didn't growl, didn't bark, didn't make a sound. His one good ear flicked toward them, his eyes one hazel, one clouded, locked on Eli. The man took a step forward, his fists clenched white around the metal shaft of the shovel. The air around him shifted like a wire pulled taut. "Stay back," he warned. "I'm not letting it get close to her again." Shadow stopped just 10 feet away and sat. The movement was slow, careful, as if the simple act of lowering his body required every ounce of energy he had left. Blood dripped from his flank. One side of his muzzle was torn, likely from the pit bulls. His chest rose and fell like a battered bellows. But even now, seated, silent, there was a dignity in him, a restraint that didn't match his appearance. He wasn't attacking. He wasn't chasing. He was waiting. "Dad," Lina said, tugging on Eli's shirt. "Please, don't." But her voice cracked, and fear still trembled on her lips. She wasn't entirely sure yet what this creature was. Guardian? Monster? Something in between? Eli raised the shovel. One step closer. Shadow didn't move. The metal caught the light, and then a voice cut the air like a whip. "Eli, stop!" Tires skidded into the gravel driveway. A cruiser door slammed. Officer Mara Vance sprinted across the grass, badge swinging at her hip, hand out like a barrier between the man and the dog. "He's not a threat!" Eli froze mid-strike. His breath heaved. His hand trembled. He followed her all the way home, covered in blood. "You telling me that's normal?" "No," Mara said firmly. "But you didn't see what I saw." "What did you see?" he demanded. She didn't answer with words at first. She just stepped closer to Shadow, her boots crunching lightly on the dirt. The dog didn't flinch. "I saw him on the road, kept his distance. Hurt, but focused. I saw the fear on Lina's face. Yes. But I also saw how he never once bared his teeth, never once lunged, not at her." Mara crouched slowly. Her fingers hovered inches from the dog's shoulder. "And I just came from Ellsworth's house. He saw it too. The bullies, the pit bulls, the bridge." Lina gasped. "Someone saw that?" Mara nodded without looking away from Shadow. "This dog didn't chase you, Lina. He fought for you." Lina turned to her father. Her voice was small but steady. "He was hurt before he ever got to me. I saw it. He didn't bite those boys. He didn't even growl. Just stood between us." Eli looked down at the shovel. It felt heavier now. Wrong in his hands, he dropped it. It clanged against the ground, a hollow, echoing sound that sent birds scattering from a nearby tree. Shadow blinked, and then lay down, right there in the dirt. No whimper, no cry, just collapse. Like a soldier finally off duty. Lina stepped forward, hesitantly. Her legs moved before her mind could protest. She knelt beside him. The closer she got, the more she noticed his scars weren't just recent. There were old ones, too. Burn marks. A missing ear. a healed-over wound across his ribs that looked too straight to be anything but man-made. Someone had tried to destroy this animal, and still he had chosen to protect. She reached out a hand, didn't touch him, just let it hover. Shadow lifted his head an inch, looked at her. In those eyes, she saw it, not just pain, but memory. The way his gaze softened, like he recognized her. Not her face, but her fear, her loneliness, her silence. He knew those things. He carried them too. "I thought you were chasing me," she whispered. Shadow blinked once, slowly. "But you were guarding me." Silence. Then Officer Mara stepped back, hand on her belt radio. "I'll call Animal Control. Not to take him in, just to scan him. This dog's got a history. I can feel it." Eli rubbed his jaw. The adrenaline was wearing off. Guilt was moving in. "Whatever it is, we owe him the truth." Shadow exhaled sharply, like he'd been holding his breath since the moment she screamed. The threat was gone. For the first time in hours, everything stood still. The living room was too quiet. No one spoke as Officer Mara set the laptop on the coffee table and connected the small flash drive. The only sounds were the soft hum of the fan and the low, steady breathing of Echo Shadow, as they still called him, who lay curled up by the doorway, eyes half closed but alert. Lina sat cross-legged on the couch, her scraped knees pulled up to her chest, fingers laced tight. Beside her, Eli hovered behind the couch, arms folded, jaw tense. "This is from the Walters house," Mara said, clicking open the file. Their doorbell cam faces the road near Ashwood Trailhead, time-stamped from about 2 hours ago. The footage was grainy, sun-washed at first. The screen showed the edge of the dirt trail, dry brush shifting in the breeze. For a few moments, nothing. Then Lina appeared alone, pedaling hard, her backpack bouncing against her spine. Her body language was unmistakable, hunched forward, eyes darting, fear. "There she is," Eli murmured. Mara hit pause. "Watch what happens next." She resumed. A few seconds later, from the far edge of the screen, he appeared. Shadow. Limping, blood already soaking the side of his leg, ears tilted forward in alert. He wasn't chasing, he wasn't charging, he was trailing, 40, maybe 50 feet behind her, careful, focused. Lina leaned in. I didn't even see him there," she whispered. The video played on. As Lina disappeared from frame, Shadow stopped right at the edge. He didn't follow into the street. He lingered, scanning, watching the direction she went. Then, a white van from the opposite side of the street. No markings. Its windows were tinted dark, too dark for daylight. It rolled to a slow crawl, just a few meters behind where Lina had passed. Then it stopped. Eli leaned forward. His voice sharpened. "What the hell?" The van idled, just sat there. Then, as Shadow turned toward it, it backed away, quick, hesitant, as if something had changed the plan. Mara paused the video again. "It leaves without ever passing her. That van never followed her route, never went down the trail, didn't even turn around. It reversed until it was gone." Eli let out a slow breath. "You think they were watching her?" "I think that dog might have scared off more than just a few bullies." Lina's eyes didn't leave the screen. She watched the moment Shadow turned, when the van pulled back. She noticed how his body tensed, then relaxed again. He saw it. He knew. Mara nodded. I've sent this footage to a contact at the FBI, just in case. But something tells me Echo wasn't just wandering. Echo, Eli repeated. That's what Animal Control found on his microchip, Mara explained, pulling out a notepad. Name, Echo. Registered to a family in Marigold Heights. Listed as deceased lost in a fire over a year ago. Lina blinked. But he's here. He's alive. Mara glanced down toward the dog curled beside the door. And still working. A silence settled in the room. One that wasn't uncomfortable, just heavy. The kind that settles when truth rearranges everything you thought you knew. Lina stood quietly walking to the screen again. She hit rewind, not to the van, to the moment before, the moment Shadow came into frame. She paused on his image, his scarred face, the torn ear, the limping gait. But none of that was what caught her attention. It was his eyes, focused, present, protective, not wild, not desperate, intentional. Eli watched her, the way her expression shifted, not from fear, but from realization. He wasn't chasing me, Lina said aloud, almost to herself. He was warning them. Mara shut the laptop gently. Sometimes the ones we fear most are the ones standing in the way of danger. Lina's voice cracked just a little. And I ran from him. Echo stirred at the sound, lifting his head, meeting her eyes. It was subtle, but something in his gaze softened, as if he too understood what had just shifted in her. You didn't run, Mara said softly. You survived. So did he. From the porch, a breeze moved the curtains. Echo's tail gave a faint thump against the floor. Once. Then silence. Eli exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. So now what? Mara looked toward the dog, then back at them both. Now, we find out why a dog who should have been dead came back to protect a girl he never met. The room fell still again, not with fear this time, but with the quiet gravity of a story just beginning to surface. The knock came just as the last sliver of sun dipped below the ridgeline, casting the house in an amber hush. Eli moved toward the door, uncertain, tension still riding his shoulders. Shadow Echo lifted his head where he lay in the entryway. No growl, no movement, just a long, steady blink. Eli cracked the door. Outside stood Mr. Ellsworth, Grandma Thelma's reclusive neighbor. Rumpled khaki jacket, old binoculars hanging from his neck like a forgotten medal, and a weather-beaten cap tugged low on his brow. "Evening," he said, voice dry like rustling corn stalks. "Didn't want to call. Figured I ought to come tell you in person." Eli opened the door wider. "Tell us what?" Ellsworth stepped in without waiting for permission, hat clenched in both hands now. "I saw it," he said. "All of it." Mara, still seated near the kitchen counter, leaned forward. "You mean the girl and the dog?" Ellsworth nodded, his eyes shifting to Lina, who had taken up residence on the floor beside Echo. She looked up at him, guarded. "Started with those boys," he said. "3 of them. Big, maybe 15, 16. Waiting at the old clearing near the West Trail, same place them teenage knuckleheads sneak off to vape and talk stupid." Eli's expression darkened. "Zane, Tyler, and Griff." "Yep. I watched 'em through my glass," Ellsworth said, tapping his binoculars. "Not because I'm nosy. Well, I am nosy, but mostly 'cause I keep track of what don't belong in them woods." He sat adjusting the binocular strap across his chest. "The girl showed up like I seen her do before. Rides that trail every week like she's got wings under them pedals. But this time, the boys didn't just laugh. They grabbed her, knocked her clean off her bike." Lina's face flushed. She looked away. "I was halfway out the door to shout when he showed up." They all turned to Echo, who hadn't moved, just blinked again, slow and measured. "Out of the trees like a ghost," Ellsworth said reverently. "Didn't bark at first, just stood there. That kind of stillness that makes you feel like nature's holding its breath." "They ran?" Mara asked. "Scattered like pigeons at a firecracker. One threw a rock, hit the dog, I think. I saw blood." Eli's fists clenched. "They hit him?" Ellsworth nodded. "But he didn't bite, didn't chase. Just stepped between them and the girl, like a wall made of muscle and fury." Lina's breath caught. Her voice came out like a thread. I didn't see it that way. I thought he was part of what was hurting me." "Easy mistake to make," Ellsworth said gently. "You were scared. But that dog never took his eyes off them boys until they were gone. Then he looked at you, like he was asking if you were going to make it." Lina's gaze dropped to Echo, who now had his muzzle resting on his front paws, ears half lowered in that wary but open posture only a dog could master. "He followed her after that," Ellsworth continued. "Didn't chase, just kept distance. And then, at the bridge—" His voice dipped. Even Mara leaned in. 3 pit bulls, Granger's junkyard dogs, broke loose again, probably hopped the south fence. Nasty things. They circled her. "I know," Mara said grimly. "We found one limping near Mill Lane, had bite marks, deep ones." "That bridge ain't but 4 feet wide," Ellsworth said. "No place to run, no place to jump. She was trapped. And that dog he charged." Lina's breath hitched again. "I thought he was coming for me." Ellsworth shook his head slowly. "Nah, child. He went for them. Full weight, full force. I ain't never seen anything like it outside of a war film." He went quiet for a moment, eyes clouded as if reliving the scene. "He didn't just fight," he finally said. "He defended, took hits, bled. One of them dogs latched onto his side, and he still didn't go down." "That explains the flank wound," Mara murmured more to herself. When it was over, Ellsworth said softly, he turned to her, not aggressive, not proud, just tired, hurt, as if he was asking permission to stop fighting. Lina's hand found Echo's fur without thinking. She let her fingers drift across his side, just where the scar tissue pulled slightly under the short coat. Echo didn't move. He just let her. "I thought he was a monster," she said quietly. "But he was saving me the whole time." Eli lowered himself beside her. His face was unreadable, his voice quiet. "I was ready to put him down in the yard. I thought I was protecting you. But maybe I was about to kill the only reason you made it back at all." "He wasn't chasing me," Lina whispered. Her voice cracked, a tear slipping past her guard. "He was following me home." The room held still. Even Ellsworth, crusty and wind-bitten, had gone silent. It wasn't just about a dog anymore. It was about what we think danger looks like, and what protection actually does. Mara straightened. Her voice returned to that clipped professionalism, but her eyes were soft. "I'll need to take Mr. Ellsworth's statement officially. But more importantly, this changes everything." She glanced toward the dog again. "This wasn't a stray attack. This was an intervention. By someone who shouldn't even be alive, Eli added. Ellsworth rose. Don't know what kind of stories you're about to dig up, but far as I can tell, that dog saved your girl's life. I'd bet my damn binoculars on it. He turned toward the door. Y'all keep him close, he said before stepping out into the night, 'cause it ain't every day you get followed home by an angel with teeth. The knock was firm, not urgent, not casual, just measured. Eli opened the door to reveal a woman in a dusty gray utility vest, her badge clipped to the chest pocket, stethoscope looped around her neck like a coiled vine. Behind her glasses, sharp eyes scanned the room before her smile arrived. Evening. I'm Dr. Sophie Hale, veterinarian and animal control officer for Elmridge County. Got a call about an injured dog involved in a possible child endangerment case? Eli nodded, stepping aside. You're looking for him. She followed his gaze. In the living room, stretched on a towel that Lina had quietly placed beneath him, lay the dog. Quiet, watchful, breathing unevenly but still present. The girl sat just feet away, silent but anchored, one hand resting on the dog's chest, as if monitoring the rhythm of his heart. That's him, Mara confirmed, standing from the armchair, but the story's more complicated than the report. Dr. Hale set her case down beside the couch and knelt with the calm gravity of someone who'd worked with animals longer than most people had worked with people. All right, handsome, she murmured, slipping on gloves. Let's see what secrets you've got stitched under that skin. Lina looked up, protective now. He's not going to bite. Dr. Hale smiled. Good to know. But I always ask permission anyway. She reached into her case and pulled out a portable scanner. With practiced ease, she ran the device gently over Shadow's neck, just below the left ear one of the standard microchip implant spots. Beep. She froze. Got something? The scanner beeped again. She angled the screen toward Mara and Eli. A number blinked to life, 15 digits long. Dr. Hale opened her tablet, fingers moving fast. Give me a minute. We'll see who he belongs to. Lina's eyes flickered between the adults. Echo, still resting, didn't flinch, but his tail tapped once, as if he knew. The silence stretched. Dr. Hale's screen loaded, her lips parted. Well, that can't be right. Mara stepped closer. What is it? This dog is registered. Name, Echo. Breed, German Shepherd. Registered owner, Benjamin Cross. Last known address, Pine Valley. That's 2 counties over. That's far, Eli murmured. Dr. Hale nodded. But here's the kicker. According to records, Echo was declared deceased 2 years ago. Lina blinked. What? Family reported him lost during a house fire, Hale explained. Firemen never recovered a body, but smoke inhalation was assumed. File closed, case marked tragic. She looked down at the scarred dog before her, his one good ear flicking toward the conversation, but otherwise unmoving. Except he's right here, alive. The room fell into a strange hush. That kind of quiet where people stop breathing, not from fear, but awe. Eli whispered, You're telling me this dog came back from the dead? Hale didn't answer directly. She just looked at Echo again, now rechecking his wounds. He's been through hell, old injuries, burns on the back flank, multiple healed fractures. Someone either didn't know how to care for him or didn't care to try. Lina leaned forward slowly. They thought he was dead, but he wasn't. Hale met her gaze. No, and it looks like he's been surviving ever since. Barely. How would he even make it this far? Mara asked. German shepherds bond for life. They remember voices, faces, smells. If Echo linked that memory with someone he thought needed protecting again. She paused, glancing at Lina. Then that might explain why he followed her. Lina's eyes welled with tears she didn't try to wipe away. He was trying to save me. The whole time. Eli sat heavily on the ottoman. His voice, when it came, was hoarse. How many times have we called something wild just because it didn't come when we whistled? Mara crossed her arms. He was trying to stop something. The white van, the bullies, the bridge attack. He stepped in every time, like a soldier without orders. Dr. Hale nodded. And he never once bit a human, despite all the chaos. Lina rose to her knees and moved beside Dr. Hale. Slowly, gently, she placed her hand on the top of Echo's head. He didn't pull away. His name's Echo, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. That's why he never barked. Dr. Hale looked at her, puzzled. Lina stroked his fur. He doesn't need to speak. He's an echo of something good, something lost. Everyone stilled. It didn't feel like just a chipped dog anymore. It felt like something had returned, something forgotten, misunderstood, unseen, and yet faithful, even now. Dr. Hale stood and nodded once, slowly. Well, I'll file this as an official match. Echo is alive. That's news enough for one day. Eli cleared his throat. So what happens next? Hale paused. Technically, he has an owner, but I think we'll need to call them, see what they want. After 2 years, people change, lives move. Lina, still kneeling, whispered, But Echo doesn't forget. No one had a response to that, because in that moment they all knew. The dog didn't come back by accident. He came back because someone still needed saving. And maybe, just maybe this time, he'd stay. The kitchen was still, save for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the ceiling fan. Outside, the dusk air folded itself into the windows, cool and faintly scented with pine and distant smoke. Echo lay curled on the blanket by the heater, his breath slow, measured, but always aware. Even in stillness, he was never fully at rest. Dr. Hale sat at the kitchen table, fingers wrapped around a mug of tea Lina had awkwardly offered her. She hadn't touched it. Instead, her eyes flicked to the dog, then to the father, then to the girl. I wasn't sure if you wanted the full story, she said finally, her voice soft. But I think you've earned it. Lina looked up. Her face was pale, but her eyes, dark and unblinking, were locked on Echo. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Eli nodded silently, so Dr. Hale began. 2 years ago in Pine Valley, there was a house fire in the eastern block, a 2-story structure. Single mother, 1 child. No pets were officially registered, but the neighbors had seen a German shepherd come and go for months. Said he was protective of the boy Benji, maybe 7 or 8 at the time. She glanced down at her tablet, swiping until she found what she needed, a grainy newspaper scan. The headline, Local Boy Pulled from Blaze by Family Dog. She turned the screen to them. They never found the dog after that night. Lina leaned in slowly, staring at the faded image. A boy wrapped in a thermal blanket. His face ash-smudged, but his tiny hand clenched tightly around a clump of fur. They say he dragged the boy out through the smoke. No one even saw it happen. Firefighters were still arriving. But when they found the child, the dog was already gone. Eli frowned. Gone? Where? Dr. Hale shook her head. No one knows. But based on the timeline, it would have been before the animal control officers got there. My guess? The dog bolted, wounded, scared. Maybe he thought the job was done. A silence settled. Even Echo, eyes half-lidded, let out a quiet sigh like an old memory surfacing. The family searched, Hale continued, for weeks, flyers, social media posts, shelters. But no one came forward. After a month, the mother assumed the worst. They moved across the state fresh start. The trauma was too much. And the dog? Eli asked quietly. Hale's eyes turned somber. 6 months later, I got a call from a private shelter near the state line. Said a large, aggressive shepherd had been found limping near a highway rest stop, covered in old wounds, half his ear gone, scars on his legs, his back, covered in ticks, half-starved. She looked at Echo again, and this time her voice cracked, just barely. They had him in quarantine, said he wouldn't eat, wouldn't bark, wouldn't even lift his head unless someone entered the room. Lina whispered, "He was waiting." Dr. Hale smiled faintly, sadly. "I think so. But the problem was, he had no tags, no collar, just a burned chip that took 2 months to finally read." She swiped to another photo. This one was rawer Echo's frame visible, ribs protruding. His eyes haunted and distant, a ghost of the animal they saw now. "That's how I met him," she said. "The shelter wanted to euthanize, said he was broken, dangerous, but I saw something different. He wasn't wild. He was wounded." Eli's jaw tensed. "So you kept him?" "Temporarily," Hale replied. "I brought him back to my ranch, gave him space. Quiet. Time." She chuckled softly. "He didn't bark for over a year. Not once. But he watched, listened, learned. Sometimes at night I'd find him sitting by the window, eyes fixed on the trees, as if waiting for something to return." Lina's voice was barely a whisper. "Or someone." Hale nodded. "Exactly." Echo stirred at the sound of her voice, his head lifting slightly, not toward the vet, toward the girl. Dr. Hale leaned back, eyes glistening. "There are dogs that bark and run and fetch because that's what they're taught. And then there are dogs like Echo. Dogs who choose." She stood and crossed the room, kneeling beside the scarred shepherd once more. Her hand rested on his neck, not clinical, not searching, just grateful. Whatever brought him here, it wasn't chance. I'd bet my license on it. Lina stepped forward slowly. Her knees bent as she lowered herself beside Echo. For a long moment she didn't move. She just studied the old warrior, his chest rising with labored breath. "You carried a boy through fire," she whispered. "And no one thanked you." Her voice cracked. "I ran from you. I was afraid of you." Echo didn't move. So she did. Her hand, still scraped from the fall at the clearing, moved forward, trembling, until it met his scarred flank. She left it there. Not petting, just touching. Anchoring. "But you came anyway." Echo's tail moved. Once. Dr. Hale stepped back, her face unreadable. Eli watched his daughter, The child he thought he was losing to silence and fear reached for something no one had trained her to believe in again: trust. "He's not just a dog," Lina murmured. "No," Dr. Hale said, voice reverent. "He's a survivor." The clinic was quiet that afternoon. Sunlight streamed through the half-drawn blinds, striping the tiled floor in pale lines. The smell of antiseptic mingled with something earthier, dog shampoo maybe, or the faint scent of blood that no mop could fully erase. In the recovery wing, the air held stillness, like a breath waiting to be exhaled. Lina stepped through the threshold with hesitant feet. Her shoes barely made a sound against the linoleum. Her hand still clutched the note her father had written, just 2 words in his tight, slanted handwriting: "Be brave." But the trembling in her fingers betrayed the war within. Dr. Hale had promised she'd give them space. So now it was just her. And Echo. The German shepherd lay on a soft blanket in the corner kennel, the gate open but uninviting. A small IV line trailed from his front leg. His bandages had been cleaned, replaced. His eye, sharp, amber, ever watching, followed her as she entered. He didn't move. Neither did she. There was a part of Lina that wanted to turn around and run again. That same part that had screamed on the bridge, that had seen only teeth and blood and fear in the dog's approach. But then she saw it. His left flank wrapped in gauze, but part of it exposed. The scar. It wasn't a simple wound. It was jagged, burned, and healed in the wrong direction. The kind of injury that told a story of fire, of weight carried, of something more than instinct, of choice. And below that, another. A long, faint scar along his side, thin like thread. It matched one just beneath the hem of Lina's shirt, an old injury from the car accident that took her mother. Glass, they'd said. A miracle, they'd said. But it never felt like a miracle. Just a mark she had to hide from kids at school who'd asked too much. Now she wasn't so sure it had to be hidden. Lina knelt slowly, knees touching the cold tile just outside the open gate. She didn't reach for him, didn't call his name. She only looked. And Echo. He looked back. His breathing remained steady. His ears, what was left of them, tilted forward just slightly. One ruined, the other alert. His gaze didn't flinch. It held her, not in threat, but in recognition. A full minute passed like that. Then Lina spoke, voice barely louder than a breath. "You saved me." Echo's chest rose. "And I ran from you." A flicker moved through his body. Not pain, not shame. Acceptance. Lina glanced down at her arm, the place where her own scar still tingled. She pulled up the sleeve and laid it bare. Slowly she held it beside his flank, close enough that the lines mirrored. "You carry yours on the outside," she murmured. Mine's just under the skin." Still, he didn't move. But something in his eyes softened like glass, warming under sunlight, like understanding that didn't need words. "I thought you were chasing me," she said. "But you were following. Protecting." She hesitated. "I think you've done that before." Her voice cracked. "I think you know what it's like to lose someone and not know where to go." That did it. Echo shifted just slightly, but enough to make a sound. A low exhale, like air leaving a place it had stayed too long. Then he nudged forward, inch by inch, until his nose touched the tip of her shoe. Lina didn't cry, but something inside her unclenched. She reached out, not quickly, not with certainty, but with something older than that. Hope. Her fingers met the rough fur just beneath his ear. His one good ear flicked once. "You're not astray," she whispered. "You're not broken." His tail moved once, twice. Then she did something that surprised even herself. She sat down, fully, legs crossed, arms in her lap. She leaned her back against the side of the kennel, and for the first time since her mother's death, she let silence be silence. Not fear, not guilt, not grief, just quiet. And Echo, sensing the shift, moved beside her. He didn't curl into her, didn't lean. He simply lay near his flank, brushing her knee. And it was enough. They stayed like that until the light shifted. Until Dr. Hale peeked through the window, saw them still and unbroken, and quietly backed away. When Lina finally stood, she didn't say goodbye. She just looked once more into those deep, unreadable eyes. "Next time," she whispered, "I won't run." And Echo blinked, as if to say he knew. The kitchen smelled like old coffee and engine grease. Eli Rose stood by the sink, arms crossed, jaw locked, eyes fixed on the back window where dusk was settling over the yard. Beyond the pane, the world looked deceptively peaceful. A breeze moved through the overgrown grass, rustling the wind chimes Thelma had hung years ago. But Eli didn't hear music. He heard the echo of fear, of growls, screams, blood, of his daughter's voice shaking, cracked that single sentence, "It followed me the whole way." The memory twisted something in his chest. That dog, that thing, had put his little girl through hell in a matter of hours. And now it lay bandaged and still in the spare room, as if it belonged here, as if it hadn't stirred every protective instinct Eli had left in his body. He turned sharply when he heard soft footsteps. Lina stood there holding a worn towel in one hand, a plastic bowl in the other. She didn't meet his eyes at first. She walked past him without a word, filled the bowl with water from the tap, then paused, finally raising her face to his. He flinched. Something in her expression was different, not hardness, not rebellion, but clarity. "He hasn't eaten," she said quietly. Eli ran a hand down his face. "Lina," his voice broke before it could become a protest, "I don't think we should." "You didn't see him on the bridge." Her words stopped him cold. "You didn't see what he did." She placed the bowl gently on the counter, then leaned her small body against the edge. Her fingers curled around the towel. A silence fell between them, heavy, like fog rolling in over a place that's been holding its breath. "I was scared," she whispered. "He was scary. And yeah, I thought he was chasing me. I thought maybe he was going to hurt me." She looked up at her father, eyes wide, not with panic, but with something steadier. Truth. But he wasn't chasing. He was following. And when those dogs came for me, he didn't run. He stayed, even when they hurt him. Eli's hand gripped the countertop. "I know you're scared too," she added. "But he didn't just show up by accident." Eli turned toward the window again. He remembered the footage, the van, the moment the dog appeared and the vehicle peeled away. He remembered how it never advanced, never growled at Lina, always just lingered, guarded. He had spent so long trying to keep his daughter safe. And yet in the moment she'd needed protection most, It hadn't been him. It had been a scarred, broken animal who refused to leave her side. "He's not a stray," Lina said behind him. "He's a soldier." The words landed like a stone in water ripples, spreading through Eli's mind. A soldier. That explained the posture, the discipline, the calculated way the dog had inserted himself, not for affection, not for reward, but because he knew something no one else could see, knew how to hurt and still move, knew how to protect without asking why. Eli turned back toward her slowly. "He terrified you," he said, almost to himself. "Only because I didn't understand him." Lina walked to the back door, opened it. The wind brushed her hair back gently, lifting it like memory. She glanced over her shoulder. "I do now." And then she stepped outside. Eli stood frozen for a long beat. Then he followed, slower, heavier. They walked in silence to the small spare room at the edge of the property. Once a tool shed, then a guest room. Echo lay curled on a folded blanket. He didn't rise when they entered, just lifted his head, watching. Lina crouched beside him. She placed the water bowl in front of him, and for a second the dog hesitated. Then he lapped quietly, rhythmically. His body trembled faintly with each breath. Eli stood in the doorway. He could still see the scars, the battered ear, the way Echo's paws were torn raw from gravel and wood. But he also saw something else. A decision. A creature who could have run, but didn't. Who had nothing to gain, but gave everything anyway. "He doesn't need to stay," Eli said finally. "We can find a placement. There's protocols." Lina looked up at him. "But where will he go? Who would understand him?" She touched the dog's neck softly, like a child might brush dust from a gravestone. "He's not just injured. He's grieving too." Echo laid his head against her knee, and that's when Eli knew. This wasn't just about what happened in the woods. This wasn't about the fear in Lina's voice, or the rocks the boys threw, or even the camera footage. This was about redemption. For a girl who lost her mother. For a dog who lost his mission. And maybe for a father who didn't always know how to hold the pieces together. Eli stepped into the room, knelt. Echo's eyes turned to him, steady, unblinking. "You're not here by chance, are you?" The dog didn't move, but in the stillness, Eli felt the weight of understanding settle between them. He reached forward, not to pet, not yet, just to acknowledge. "Okay," he murmured. He looked at Lina. "He stays." She nodded, just once. "He's not a stray," she repeated, voice soft but unshaking. "He's a soldier." The night deepened around Ashwood, wrapping the small town in a quilt of quiet, broken only by the hum of distant streetlights and the soft breath of trees. Inside the house, Lina stood at the window, one hand resting on the sill, the other gently stroking Echo's head where he lay beside her feet. His eyes were half closed, his body finally at ease, as if he too had felt the weight of the decision made that evening and found peace in it. Outside, the world seemed to hold its breath, not with fear, not with dread, but with a sense of something new beginning. The kind of beginning that doesn't need fireworks or headlines because its strength lives in small, steady things. A girl who no longer runs, a father learning to trust again, a dog who chose them both. Eli stood behind her, silent. He didn't try to fill the quiet. He just watched his daughter and the dog who had saved her, not once, but over and over, in ways that couldn't always be seen or measured. And in that stillness, Eli understood that their family wasn't what it had been, or what he had once planned, but it was whole, in a way that mattered most. "Come to bed, kiddo," he said at last, his voice rough with emotion he didn't try to hide. "He'll still be here in the morning." Lina turned and nodded. She knelt, pressing one last kiss to the top of Echo's scarred head. His ear twitched, his tail thumped softly, and his gaze followed her as she walked away. The house settled around them, creaks in the floorboards, a sigh of wind through the cracked open window. Echo shifted, resting his head on his paws, eyes heavy, but still watchful, always watchful. Not out of duty now, out of love. And as sleep took the house in its gentle grip, Echo's breathing matched Lina's from down the hall. Steady, sure, together. Outside, dawn waited, and so did the next step in their story. Not as a rescue, not as a debt repaid, but as a family. By choice. Always by choice. The dawn broke soft and forgiving, brushing ashwood in pale gold as if the night had never held shadows. The town, still hushed, seemed to exhale along with the girl who stepped quietly out onto the porch. Lina rose, barefoot and wrapped in her mother's old cardigan, carried no leash this time. She didn't need to. Echo padded beside her, head high, step slow but sure. The scars he bore weren't hidden, and neither were hers. Together they moved down the path, past neighbors' windows still drawn with sleep, past the mailbox that now bore a small charm of a blue ribbon, a silent promise of protection kept. At the edge of town, the trail opened wide, welcoming them like an old friend. The world ahead was bright and waiting. No more ghosts on the path, no more weight in Lina's chest. Just the rhythm of sneakers against earth, of paws beside her, of heartbeats in sync. They paused at the creek, where water sang over stones smoothed by time. Lina crouched, tracing a finger along the wood of the bridge that had once marked her fear. Echo stood still, watching the water, watching her, as he always had. "You don't have to guard me now," Lina said softly. Echo blinked, ears tilting forward as if to say, "I always will." And maybe that was true. But the guarding had changed. No longer from what lurked in woods or behind corners, but from the doubt that once lived in Lina's own heart. Together they crossed the bridge, not as the girl who fled and the dog who chased, but as two who had learned step by step how to trust again. Behind them, the sun climbed higher, spilling light over the trees, the path, the small town of Ashwood. Ahead, the trail curved into the day's promise, and side by side they followed. If you'd like, I can help write an epilogue set years later, or perhaps a letter Lina writes as an adult reflecting on Echo's legacy. Let me know what direction you'd like to explore next. And so, Ashwood breathed again, this time, not in relief, but in remembrance. Even as night fell and porch lights flickered on one by one, no one forgot the path that had been carved through fear and silence. In the weeks that followed, the town changed in small, meaningful ways. The broken fence by the creek was mended but left unpainted a reminder, not a scar. The bridge was no longer a place of whispered warnings but one of quiet visits, where children left pebbles and ribbons at its edge for Echo. The park installed a small plaque near the trailhead. Echo, a guardian found, a family chosen, for the protector who taught us to see. Lina kept riding, further each time, Echo always at her side, his pace slower now, but steady. The nightmares that once clawed at her sleep softened, then faded, replaced by dreams of clear trails and the soft thump of paws keeping time with her heartbeat. And on nights when the crickets sang loudest and the stars were bold, Eli would find himself at the window, watching the two of them in the yard, girl and dog, dancing slow circles in the dark like they were tracing the shape of all they'd survived. In those moments, the world felt whole again, not perfect, not untouched, but whole. And when Echo, old and graying but unbowed, would finally lie down at Lina's feet with a sigh that spoke of battles fought and won, Lina would always lean down, brushing the fur beside his scar, and whisper, "You can rest, soldier. We've got it from here. If you'd like, I can help write an epilogue showing where they are years later, or a new chapter where Lina and Echo help someone else. Just let me know." In a world that often forgets the quiet ones, stories like Echo's remind us not all heroes wear uniforms. Some walk on four legs, carry scars we'll never see, and love without condition. This wasn't just a story about a dog. It was about loyalty that never wavered even when misunderstood, about a girl who learned to trust again, and a family that chose healing over fear. German shepherds like Echo are more than protectors. They are reminders that love doesn't need words, that bravery isn't always loud, and that sometimes what we fear the most is what saves us. So if this story moved you, take a moment to look at the animals around you, the ones who wait at the door, the ones who've never left your side. They don't ask much, just to be seen, and maybe to be followed home. Let's be kinder, let's listen deeper, and let's never forget the ones who walk beside us, even in the shadows. If you believe in second chances for people and for dogs like Echo, leave a heart in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more true, powerful stories that remind us what really matters.